let's start at the beginning. What got you into this?
As far as writing goes, I guess I was always like sort of born with a morbid curiosity. I always gravitated towards horror and violence for some reason. Not that I'm a violent person or anything, but just for whatever reason, I always like disturbing stuff or, stories about serial killers. Probably what got me into it though was maybe like in those early years, sort of like the Alvin Schwartz and R.L. Stein, some of the more tamer stuff opened the doorway, to more extreme stuff like American Psycho or,
The
just
book or the movie?
the book. I watched the movie first, but then the book, my teacher really told me I should read it because there is a lot like crazy or fucked up shit in the book than the
Oh,
movie.
definitely. I felt kind
Yeah.
of let down by the movie because I read the book first and I watched the movie. And I was like, you left out all these parts, and like it feels like
Yeah.
it's kind of like cleaned up for Hollywood.
I know. Yeah. I think like that I get it. Like it probably, certain things probably wouldn't have been marketable, like the stuff with the rats or like kills a kid at the zoo, like stuff like that. But that's why I don't know. I feel like you might be the same too. Like I don't particularly like boundaries in my horror. But I get that it's going to be there for like more mainstream stuff.
Well, everybody's more subjective too, so like especially like movie companies are like this might offend some target audience that might spend a crazy amount of money. So like I
Yeah.
remember in the book, there's like I think one of his dates he kills her and he saves her brain in a Tupperware container. And another one of his dates goes to the fridge and opens up and there's like a Tupperware container with somebody's brain in it. It's like that
Yeah.
was not in the movie, but that was an awesome part.
Yeah, that was they probably could have got away with that, but it's like some of the stuff. It's like when he crucifies the girl and like puts the hungry sewer rat, against her snatch and makes it eat up into her body. Like, like I'd love to see it on screen, but I know there's probably not a market for it. But
Well, I remember it was Bret Easton Ellis, and he did what was the book he did before that? Like Lesson
Lesson
Zero.
zero,
Yeah,
yeah,
and he was like kind of the critics' darling, and then he came out with with that book, and they're like, "What happened to you?"
yeah.
I think I read Lesson Zero, and it was like wasn't too impressed, but American Psycho is a classic.
Yeah, I read Lesson Zero. It's definitely like way different. I think that's just more about like excess and the drug use of the fucking
Right.
period, and everybody's fucking everybody kind of thing. Um, and honestly, like American Psycho's like that in some ways too, I think. But there's this whole element of extreme violence too, which isn't there in a lot of his other stuff.
It's
But
actually really smart when he like talks about Huey Lewis and news and like he like tries to break it down or Genesis or whatever. He tries to and somehow he makes it relate to whatever he's thinking, whatever he's doing. Like the whole chapter with the business cards. You remember that? Like
yeah, I love it. The dark humor. They got some really weird dark humor in it. It's
yeah.
cool.
So let's focus back on you. So you said you like to like go a little bit more extreme. Do you have a big influence of that?
Um, I don't know that I would say like a particular influence. It's always been there. It's just something that's been there. I mean, I do have influences like in writers that I enjoyed. Like I was really into like Clive Barker. I like Shane McKenzie a lot. Some of his stuff. Those are two that I could probably point to. But as far as like I don't know that I necessarily write a lot like either of them though. Like, Clive Barker is very supernatural and there's a lot, there's demonic things in a lot of his writing. Like whereas I always tended to write more grounded horror, I think, like the guy breaking in through your windows a little bit more of a threat than a ghost to me, like, and that real sense of fear. So I kind of like going more down those type of paths than supernatural. But I will do some supernatural too.
How supernatural do you get? What's causing the supernatural? Is it like alien forces? Is it religious? Is it what's the inspiration?
Well, if I do decide to go supernatural, like I did that for a release I had at the end of last year called All Smiles Until I Return. And I've always been fascinated with the afterlife. And like what does this all mean? So really that was like a rendition of what life could mean and sort of this guy's journey after he gets after a random act of workplace violence, he sort of gets thrust into the afterlife. And I mean, yeah, you can call that supernatural, but even, I mean, nobody really knows what the afterlife is. So who knows? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of up to interpretation, but I thought that was really fun being able to play in a world because I'm not typically accustomed to that. Be able to play in a world where you can sort of do whatever you want. I think that's cool.
Do you think are you a religious person? Do you believe in a specific afterlife concept?
I wouldn't call myself religious. No, I believe that, but I'm open. You know what I mean? Like I believe nobody knows. I think like, I guess maybe more agnostic would be the way to say it. But like, to the atheist, it's sort of like, they don't sort of believe in anything. And then you have the overly religious and different sects of religion. And I just think like they're both leaps of faith in a sense to me. You know what I mean? Like even as an atheist, you're taking a leap of faith saying that there's nothing when there is not evidence to support that. And then if you do have a faith, there's a certain leap of faith you're taking toward that faith and belief. Whereas I guess like, I'm kind of more in the middle where I'm like, okay, I don't know. I'm okay with saying I don't know. And like anything is sort of possible.
I think that's more like if you take a deep dive into that and you get technical, it's like the agnostic is more like they're kind of open to interpretations and change and stuff. The atheist is kind of like the O.J. Simpson trial. Like the jurors found him not guilty; they didn't find him innocent. So like the atheists like find God not guilty of existing because they haven't seen the proof yet, but they're open to whatever proof. Whereas like the people who are like there's absolutely no God whatsoever are anti-theists. So,
Oh, okay. So maybe I had that wrong, but yeah, but so you could tell I don't fucking know shit about religion. Like, you know what I mean? I don't really know a ton about it. Despite having gone to Catholic school a couple years early on, and then I went to public school. But that was really my only major exposure to religion, and I don't know. I don't think I don't think anything is impossible at this point. Like in my life, everything seems like, no matter how crazy it is, everything seems like it could be possible.
do you prefer like more of the like fucked up people, kind of the slasher stuff, as opposed to like the Pumpkinhead or like kind of like mystical creatures coming out of the woodwork?
Yeah, probably more on the slasher side, or just like an evil human being, you know, that's orchestrating terrible things to happen too. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be the person with blood on their hands, but I do like that. I've done slasher, a Halloween slasher. My book Scary Bastard, that was a Halloween slasher. But then I'll do stuff that's like, more about manipulation. People manipulating other people into doing terrible things, which is a real part of life as
Right.
well. So I find that pretty interesting as well.
Okay, so like I know we talked about like some of your favorite books. Like, what would be some of your favorite movies? Would they be kind of along the same lines?
Yeah, I mean, I like a little bit of everything, honestly. Like, if we're talking horror, um, there's a real good movie, The Sadness, that came out recently. I really did like that a lot. I don't know if you've seen that,
I
but
haven't seen that now.
it's I think its success has done a lot for maybe like potentially our genre having more opportunities in the film realm, I think, because you know it is extreme violence, and like what our stories could potentially be if they hit the screen. And but it's done in a great way. You know, it's very stylistic. It's an interesting story, and I think people should really check that out. Like if we're going for something more recent, as far as like older stuff, I mean, I love everything. There's a real good French horror movie called Inside.
No, I've seen
Um,
that. Yeah, that's a great movie.
that's an excellent movie. Don't watch the American one. That one is terrible. I don't know if you've seen that. I didn't even know they made an American one until recently, but it is not very good at all. Um, but that original is real awesome. I like that a lot.
There was a whole series that came out there. Martyrs. Have you seen Martyrs?
Yes, Martyrs was
Martyrs
awesome.
came
Yeah.
out. Frontiers came out. I didn't enjoy
Yep.
Frontiers much because I felt like that was kind of like the French version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I've kind of seen this already.
Yeah, it had some good moments, but I know what you mean. It was like it was sort of like that, and then the characters weren't as scary to me for some
Right.
reason. Like,
Yeah, no,
so there's
I remember Texas. I still think the original is a masterpiece. I remember seeing that when I was a little kid. And I was like, wow, people are really fucked up. You know, it was
oh
like
yeah,
a
dude.
totally different take.
A lot of people still think that's the most, a lot of people still will consider that their most disturbing movie. I remember like my dad saying that, and some of my uncles, when I asked them, because that's the type of shit I was curious about, like what's the worst movie you've seen or the craziest, they would say that. But
Yeah, I used to like I grew up on like little military bases everywhere in my dad's army, so we did often read from the library, and they used to be able to go a lot more extreme in books than they did in movies. And I remember I'd read stuff like the novel came out in the '70s, and I'd be like, "Holy shit!" Like, have you had that
uh,
experience? Like you read the books and you're like, "Wow, they really dove deep into this."
yeah, there's so much more. It gets like a lot more granular, like when you can talk about something, sure, you can show something. There's only so much you can show.
Right.
But as far as like adding details with text, it's like you could the sky's the limit. You know what I mean? Like, and I just think, you know, it's sort of lost a little bit in society today because there's of attention spans and things like that. There's probably less people reading, but the pandemic has been pretty interesting in that I feel like there's a large resurgence in horror readers during that pandemic window. Maybe some more people found it.
I think a lot of people like my latest book is called The End of the World. It's all apocalyptic. And with the pandemic, everybody's like, "Holy shit, the world's collapsing around me!" And all of a sudden, sales shot up. But I think everybody with the pandemic, they start looking at like negative stuff and take it a little bit more seriously. You know,
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know if you're like this, but when there's like a major event, a world event, for some reason I like want to watch movies about it too, like or read books about it, like so it's just interesting, you know, like you want to see what people's minds come up with of possible scenarios, I guess.
So was that kind of an inspiration when everything kind of locked down? Where you like it was more extreme changes than I even thought. Like the whole world locking down.
Yeah, that was fucking crazy, man. Like, honestly, it's scary a little bit. I think everybody would feel that way because you don't know the direction of the changes, how extreme the changes are going to be. We want to be respectful to each other while there was this thing going on that nobody really knew about.
Right.
But at what point do you have to draw the line with, you can't go take a walk in the park. You know what I mean? Like it just got real fucking weird in some places.
Yeah,
And
weird. It got political, and you had like I owned a
yeah,
tattoo shop, and like there were people coming in and peering in through the window to see if you're wearing masks and whatever. It's like people are just going to extremes. It's like almost like people didn't know how to react to it.
totally. Yeah. And it's, we've never seen anything like it. You know what I mean? It was fucking groundbreaking. And it just shows how quickly society can contort and change and obey, depending on what the situation is. And regardless of what you believe about the situation, that in itself is a very scary thing because every such massive change in a quick way, sure, it could be a good thing, under the right circumstance.
Right.
Under a different circumstance, it could be a very scary thing,
It's
a very
almost like
bad,
being
very evil thing.
under a microscope because you get to see how people react, and it's like all sorts of weird ways, and then take it to extremes that you don't expect. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's what I thought with that pandemic. I was like, wow, that really happened, and people really took it that way. Yeah,
it's
it was
crazy, dude.
kind of a strange dissection and stuff. But so, did you get more productive then? Were you working another job before that, or are you a full time writer?
I had well, I was at like a bank for like 12 years, mostly taking phone calls. And then maybe like 8 years into that, I finally got off the phones and I was doing like more tech support work for the applications. And I was pretty happy right there. And that's kind of when I started really hitting my groove with writing. But then I got moved into a position where I was like managing a small team of offshore people in India, and I was dealing with extremely complicated applications that I hadn't used in my other role. And so I was super fucking stressed out at that point. And thankfully, though, that's when my writing really started to get some steam and sales and people behind it, to where it got to a point where it was like actually kind of feasible. Like, okay, maybe I can step away. Maybe this isn't as crazy as it seems. But it was a long period of working a job that absolutely made me miserable, like borderline fucking suicidal at points. Like, just like, I'm just like done with this. Like, I hate my life every day I wake up. But while that was going on, I was still able to push myself to write, and not only write, but I self-published the majority of my material. So formatting, getting covers done, illustration requests, all that stuff. But by the time, I had pushed through it and was getting enough sales, and I think a lot of it, if you're curious, or your listeners might be curious on that end, online promotion, not paying for ads. I've never paid for a single ad. I've interacted with a lot of my readers online. And I've been fortunate to get certain things to go. I think I had one thing, particularly the slob, go viral on TikTok, and that really helped my career a lot, because it just sort of blew up that book. And then some of my back catalog started getting explored. And, since that point, I've been very stable. There are ebbs and flows, and I think most full-time writers will tell you that, it goes up and down. But as long as it goes up, again, you should be good. And I've been good now. I've been going a little over, maybe a little 2 or 3 months over a year full-time writing now.
Okay, awesome, awesome. How do you get your stuff out there? Like, what do you find to be the most successful? Because you obviously said you don't pay for ads. Do you do videos for your books? Do you advertise on like Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and the social media?
Yeah, and like I won't pay for ads on there, but I'll post, and I might not have a huge following. Like, you might see some people that have like, I don't know, 34K following on Instagram or something like that. But my question is, like, what's the quality of your following?
It's true.
Like, are these
People get
people
paid for followers too.
right? And it's like those, I see people with those numbers that tried to write full time, and then had to go backwards, unfortunately. And so it's like, I don't think those numbers are everything. I think that it's the quality and how you treat your readers, interacting with them, thanking them. I'm always on there saying thanks when people mention my name, like, I try not to miss even one. I just sort of dedicate a beginning part of my day to saying thank you to people, and then go into whatever else I got to do. But I think branding has been real big for me. I've recently launched my store, abhorror.com.
Okay.
So I try to go with something nice and trim and lean, AB horror, nice and easy to remember. That's been helpful for me, is now having that store in a central place where people can go, and I can do exclusive items. You know what I mean? Like I can do weird shit. Like I did slob dinner plates. You know, like very weird stuff, just to be like, oh, this is something different. You know what I mean? And the sky's the limit. So I'm constantly trying to think of like weird things that I can do that will hopefully make my readers happy and keep them interested. But consistency, I would say, that's the biggest thing. Consistent release pattern. Every 3 to 5 months, I think you should definitely have a release. You know.
Okay. Do you do any swag like bookmarks or stickers, anything like that?
Yes. So I'll do like custom bookmarks.
Nice.
I usually do like these signature book plates too.
Nice.
High quality. I like the high quality fridge magnets, and I've noticed like a lot of my readers like enjoy collecting them now. You know, so like they'll have their whole fridge lined up with them, and I try to keep them the same. You know, so they can have.
Well, you know, when you die, all that stuff's gonna be worth a ton of money, but while you're still alive, it's probably gonna be worthless.
Right.
That's the way it always happens, you know. The moment you die, it's priceless.
Right. I'm just happy anybody gives a shit about it in general. But so it's cool, you know, even if I don't get, you know, that popular, if I can have like a relatively like loyal audience and continue to put out stuff for them, you know, it's good enough for me. But I'm hoping to do some other things. Like I'm hoping to get into some film stuff. Have a few things that are kind of, the wheels are kind of turning on. But with that stuff, it's like you can never guarantee anything. There's so many people involved with film shit that
It's weird too. It's like they see something that inspires something, they tell their friend, then all of a sudden, you know, the worst novel gets highly rated and the best novel gets overlooked. Yeah. It's kind of like the story of life. But so have you pitched your stuff directly to, you know, people in Hollywood or Netflix or anything like that, or they come to you? What's the story in that?
So far they've come to me. I've had one person that, you know, he's been an assistant director on some pretty major films, and he's done a couple of films himself earlier in his career, and now he's kind of like really trying to push to do something bigger. So yeah, I signed an option with this. I can't really divulge his details yet, but I signed an option for Wedding Day Massacre in my book. I can say that much. And yeah, it's if it's going to be done, it will be done on a big scale. From what he said, because he said, you know, he can't make it for under $500,000. Like it would have to be $500,000. He's hoping for $1 million, but it all depends on investors. You know, his production company will shop the script as it's about to wrap. The script is about to wrap now, so they're planning on starting to shop it and shooting like a teaser trailer to sort of hopefully go with the script and entice people for funding at that point.
Okay.
And then the other,
You write it a little bit to be more of a screenplay for a movie.
yeah, definitely, because there was in that particular book, there's a decent amount of stuff going on in people's heads, you know, which you can't translate that to the screen really. So certain things had to be
or something. Yeah, I know they did that with Blade Runner. Like they did the original cut without a voiceover, and then the studio told them you need a voiceover because we don't know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So I think like there will be some changes, but I think that's good too. I wouldn't want my readers to go and watch it and be like, oh, there's no surprise to them. You know what I mean? Like I would want the movie to be a little bit different than the book, you know, personally. And this dude's super cool. Like he's very collaborative. We'll just sit, I mean, we've sat there and talked for like 6 hours, a bunch of different times, you know, just talking about it and, you know, making sure we can translate everything to screen properly. So we'll see
So
what
that's
happens.
good. That's good that they actually consulted with you and want to work with you on something as opposed to just buy a property and turn it into something they think they can market. Like I feel like it happens way too often.
Right. This feels more organic. Like it's more of a, like, he just happened to read the book, and he was like, was not expecting much, he just thought it would be a fun thing. And then, as a creative person, he's like, and a filmmaker, he's like, man, I really would like to fucking make this. Like, he was kind of surprised that he thought that, because he didn't expect much, he said. And then he reached out to me, and he was like, if we're going to do it, like, I want to do it right. And like, you get us, it's a 50-50 thing. We both got to agree on changes and all that. So it was a very from some of the horror stories I've heard with that, it's actually been really good. And we're very similar personality type, I think. So it's
Well,
good.
that's great that he read your stuff and he liked it, as opposed to somebody just told him, "Hey, you should do this because it'll probably sell." Like I know
Yeah.
Rodriguez did that with Frank Miller. Like Frank Miller after RoboCop was not going to do anything with Hollywood, because he wrote the script for RoboCop 2, and the studio tried to change it, and then they hired a third writer to come in, and that guy fucked up, or a second writer to come in, and then they asked him to come back and rewrite what the second writer had rewritten out of his script. He said, "Fuck you." So then they got a third writer to come in, and he's like, it was nothing like his original, and he said, "I'll never deal with Hollywood again." And when they did the Sin City movie, Rodriguez came in and said, "I will let you direct with me. I'm really a fan."
Yeah, that's awesome. And you could tell how that fucking movie came out. And
Yeah.
Frank Miller's incredible. And it's like, yeah, I know what you mean. Like, and who's to say? I don't know. Like, this could completely change when investors come into play. It could fucking get all warped. That's the thing. You never know with these things. And this is my first experience with it. So, and it could all go to shit. Like, nobody could invest in it. You never know. But it's
You
cool to
never
have
know, yeah.
somebody that is kind of like, in at least has some connections, and has assistant directed in some pretty major pictures, and he believes in you, at least. So that's cool. But
No, it's cool, and I hope it works out. I hope your stuff comes out. Um,
oh, thanks,
so
man.
you were saying that you worked for a bank for a long time, then you started putting out, novels, and you started putting out written work. Um, how long did you do something else before that, and then you switched? Like, what was it like? You did one job, and you kind of kept the novels like on the side. You were working on them, and then you're like, "I'm going to put something out."
Yeah, I was actually releasing books while I was at work for the bank, and these were, the genre we are in is kind of controversial. So it's like, I did always have that worry in the back of my head, and I'm like, fuck, should I have used a pen name? Because my name is kind of like specific, the Aaron with one A, like,
Right.
it's not.
They judge you based off the content of the books.
Yeah, but thankfully, nobody really. I never had somebody at work come up to me and be like, "Oh, I saw that, like, you're an author." So apparently, like, there just wasn't a lot of horror readers or whatever, and it's a small office,
Right.
overall, in the grand scheme. But yeah, so nobody came up to me like that, but it was always kind of a worry in the back of my head. And I did that. I think I was releasing novels for maybe like 2.5 or 3 years. 2.5 or 3 years before I got, what I think was enough, financially, and enough momentum to be able to, like, step away and put my 2 weeks in. And that was crazy, because I was waking up like with a knot of stress in my chest, just completely overwhelmed, dude. Like, I know it sounds stupid. You're probably thinking, like, you're working at a bank, like, how bad could it be? It's just like a psychological agony that I don't really know how to explain it.
No, I
But
understand. I've worked a lot of like 9 to 5 jobs, and you'd be surprised how stressful some of them are. Like
yeah,
even when it seems like it's a really simple job, it's really not.
it's incredibly complex, and it's like, I don't like not knowing what the fuck I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, not being confident in what I'm doing. And that was the case every day. It was just question marks and uncertainty, and me being a leader in a role that I really, I think I did an admirable job. People liked me and everything, and they liked what I did, but it just was not, it was not good, dude. And as a creative person, like, it's one thing, like, I've done tons of factory jobs too, like that. I grew up doing all hard labor, you know, and then I transitioned into banking later on. But um, you know, at least when you were on the dock loading trucks or whatever the fuck you were doing, you could live inside your own head. You know, you could be creative in your mind and have ideas. Like this job, there was none of that. It was like your creativity was being, you know, sucked out of you as you
Right, being sapped for like technical bullshit that you weren't really interested in.
exactly, dude. Exactly. So
So, do you use like some of the like life experiences in your writing? Do you, like, I find that like often, you know, either a certain dream I had, or you know, some trip I went on where it's like it turned into a monsoon rainstorm, or like some weird event in my life helps inspire me to write a story about it. Do you do the same thing?
absolutely. Like you just said, trip I went on. I mean, I've done like a lot of drugs, shrooms, particularly. Those were the most, you know, shrooms, DMT. That's like life altering shit when you start playing with that.
I've never
And
done DMT. I have done shrooms. I've done a lot of
yeah,
drugs myself, actually, allegedly.
but you know what I'm saying? Like I'm sure you've had that shroom trip, or you've gotten that batch that is just like much different than everything else you've had, and you just break through to like what you almost feel like is this new plane of existence. And
You smoke weed and somebody laced you with something, and then all of a sudden,
yeah. So yeah, I wrote a whole book of drug-based horror stories, hallucinations off of a really bad trip that I had, and then I've used all different life experience, like the slob was there was some life experience, and as I said, all smiles with the banking shit. Like I put some of the banking stuff into that, and just like, you know, when you're ready to wake up and blow your fucking head off. Um, just yeah, I think that's important to put a little bit of yourself. You know, you don't want, it doesn't have to dominate the book. You want to have like creativity and characters and imagination in it. But yeah, I think putting a little of yourself adds that layer of realism into the writing, you know, that, and a lot of times people can relate to that.
yeah, definitely. And one, it makes it more authentic, it makes it more real. Like, I think one of the things, I'm not a huge Stephen King fan, but I think one thing that he does great is like his characters are really believable. Like you
Yes.
watch it and you're like, I can see that person doing that. I can see this person interfering with that person. Like the reactions seem real to me.
100%, 100%. I think I agree that you hit the nail on the head. His characters are super believable, super realistic. Um, I love your hat too, though. I'm a huge
Oh,
Tales
thank
from
you.
the Crypt. I like the EC comics. I have all the fucking a bunch of the reprints of the EC comics, and you know, I just love that series too. That was a
Yeah,
tremendous series.
a lot of those inspired me when it like when I first got out of high school. Well, I was homeless after high school, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to be a comic writer and artist. And I remember like Bernie Wrightson and EC Comics and like, you know, The Shadow and stuff like that. They hugely inspired me. And people are like, they think comic books and they think, oh, Iron Man and Superman. I really wasn't into that, but yeah, there were a lot. Like EC was like one of the greats. I thought they had some great artists putting out some great stuff, and unfortunately, it got kind of shut down by the moral majority, and they had a, I don't know, like I know way too much about this, but they had a psychologist who wrote a book that said that comics like Tales from the Crypt were leading to juvenile delinquency, and they had hearings, and they came up with this approval code. Everything had to be like milk with toast, or you know, people like 7-Eleven wouldn't carry it, and that basically killed all the EC comics, like all the Tales from the Crypt and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's like it's funny because history repeats itself with that, and it's like as it continues, you know, they do it not only for comics, but then it became video games, you know, and
Yeah.
everything else. It's just like that sucks, but there was a good amount of them that were put out, and it's like they were always just great, you know. They always had that nice twist in them, and I don't know. There's something that is just I'm
They're kind of
glad.
clever, like little stories, like little short stories, but like a clever idea.
Yeah, it's always all those are great. That was a big influence for me for sure.
I
Uh,
feel because I also do a lot of illustrations. When I write, I try to describe stuff. Like I remember reading like a sci-fi novel. I'm not going to name anybody because I don't want to shame anybody. And there are people that think are great authors. They just, their work on one thing didn't grab me. But I remember reading something that was a big sci-fi thing. And they're talking about like other worlds and all sorts of stuff. But he's not describing anything. And you can over describe stuff, but he was not describing anything. So I was like, I don't know what in this looks like, and it's such like a weird alien thing that I would like to at least know a little bit about it. And none of that was grabbing me, so I can picture it. What do you think?
oh yeah. Yeah, I think like you could probably get away with that with characters to some extent, let people envision the characters, but like when you're talking about something that is foreign to us, you know what I mean? Like you said, that's like a weird looking thing, right?
Right.
That's
You
part
know,
of that's part of your job is to paint that picture, you know? It's like that's a big part of it. Like I get it with, a character, if it's a male or a female or whatever, you might go light on it and say maybe their hair color and let them picture the rest.
right.
That's fine, but this is a big focal point of the story, so you have to do your. That's part of what you're doing, Like that's why you're there.
You need to paint a picture for people. Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as editing your stuff, do you edit it yourself? Do you hire somebody else to edit it? Do you have your friends read it? What's your process there?
Well, I like to be very honest about this, and that my early work was fucking total shit. The first,
I
I
think
think,
everybody would agree with that. Yeah.
yeah. If I mean, don't get me wrong, maybe there's some people that fell into that like ideal thing, and they were groomed by a great writer, and
Right.
they knew a great writer, and they groomed them and made sure that first release was just like roses. But that's
You
probably
looked
not the
out your Joe
case.
Hill and your dad was Stephen King.
Yeah. But that's probably not the case for most of us. And I released, I think I'm going to say 4 books before I got a professional editor to start working with me. Um, and I realized, I'm glad that nobody really read my shit before then, because it could have been detrimental if people saw what I was putting out and just the level of the infantile nature of what it was. So but the thing is, you got to acknowledge that and then be like, yeah, I have to evolve, or I'm not going to go anywhere and no one's going to pick this stuff up. And so I did that. I got an editor, and since then, sometimes I'll even have different editors work on a project. I'll have one editor do a run through, and then somebody different do a run
Right.
through. And as I've branched out more and started doing, I did the Written and Read podcast with a few other horror authors, and also the Scares That Care convention in Williamsburg, Virginia. And since then, I feel like I've really met a real solid network of people.
Is that convention good? The Scared Security Convention?
Yeah, that's real good.
Okay.
Yeah, they do one in July, I think, and then one in April that's like an author specific. The July one is kind of like everything, movies, whatever you can imagine, sort of thing.
Okay.
And then the April one is authors only, pretty much, um, which it's been awesome. I that was a great networking experience. I got to meet a lot of people that I talked to over the internet, or didn't even get a chance to really talk to. That was the first experience, and it was freaking awesome. It was. I consider it career changing going to it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. I know Jack Pantry from Splatterpunk recommended that to me. Another one is KillerCon, which is in Austin, Texas. I'm going to do that this year.
Oh yeah, KillerCon's awesome. I wanted to go. I'm a little too. I went to Scares, and I'm really far away from
Right.
that. I'm actually nominated for the Splatterpunks for 2 categories, which is
Oh, that's
why I
awesome.
really
Yeah.
really want to go, but it just fucking financially doesn't work right now, unfortunately. But I hope you have a good time though. I'm sure you will. I did the virtual one last year
Okay.
when they were doing, coronavirus, of course, but that was awesome. There's a lot of good readings, a lot of good workshops too, where you can learn about all different topics from collaborating to editing, everything.
Well, I remember I did it's called the World Horror Convention. I thought it would be bigger than it is. It's mainly like people like either authors or it's publishers. And I remember that was a good experience, but they had one convention and it was like editors were talking about their work, and like what they do and what they can do, or not editors, agents were talking about what they can do for your novel and so on. And I didn't like I remember talking to the agents and they're very friendly, but it's kind of like almost that like social, like okay, everybody's my friend, but I don't know. I didn't. It wasn't really a good experience for me.
Was it more like used car salesman almost?
Yes,
Like,
yes, yeah. It felt
yeah,
like that.
I think you'll find it much, much different at KillerCon and Scares That Care if you attend that one. It's very personalized, and that one is it's nobody's there to make money essentially at those. There,
Mhm.
I think it's really about author networking. Like, sure, there'll be readers that will buy books and stuff, but I mean, as far as from just a networking perspective, you're going to get to talk to people. Like one of the things I thought that was great was just also seeing certain people do readings,
But they have
and
live readings from authors.
yeah, just like their styles and guys that have been doing it, like a Jeff Strand, for example, like a guy that's been doing it for so long, and he's incredible. He could have been a stand-up comedian the way he did his reading. I mean, it was unbelievable. Like he literally, it was a standing ovation, a roaring crowd, like a football
Oh
game. It
wow,
was
yeah,
great. So it just stuff like that, stuff that, you wouldn't really be able to see otherwise.
yeah. Have you tried any of your stuff in Audible?
Yes, I have 6 books released on Audible. At first, I was real slow to get to it, unfortunately, but I did get on it, and yeah, you can make some good revenue off of Audible. And the cool thing is they give you a lot of promo codes too. I think you get like 20 US and 20 UK. So it's a good way to sort of spread your work to people and hopefully get more listeners as a result in that regard. But
Yeah,
I love Audible.
I use Audible for my latest book, and Audible far outsells everything else. Like people love audiobooks, apparently.
I don't think you'll see sales as you would on Amazon or wherever you're selling your books. You'll still get more book sales, but it's a good way to reach readers that you might not otherwise be able to tap into because some people only listen.
Right.
So
Yeah, I'm amazed at people who are like, "Yeah, I never read." I'm like, "Really? You never read anything?" Like, no, no, I never read. Is it available in audio? So to me, that strikes me as kind of a weird experience because they seem like they have a decent knowledge of stuff, but they don't read anything. It's like,
yeah,
where did that come from? And I feel like I remember as a kid, like I'd watch like Twilight Zone and Outer Limits, and
love it. Yeah.
and I get hugely inspired by all that stuff. But it's like I wasn't thinking of my own stuff. It was like, yeah, but I don't want to copy other people. But I was a kid, so I didn't feel like I had like a huge well of information to draw from. But as I've gotten older, it's almost like I have too much to draw from. It's like I have all these crazy ideas and not time to get them all down. Do you feel kind of the same way?
Yeah, I was talking about this on our podcast the other day, actually, because like we were talking about ghostwriting, and I was saying I would be a terrible ghostwriter because I don't want to. It's not that I have an ego. I don't give a fuck about the ego. I just get very sentimental toward I have a sentimental connection to my work, and to give that away, and like I want to just like continue to expand my catalog where I could just see all these works. And as far as
You have a way you want to portray stuff, and if somebody else takes over the reins, they're not portraying or picturing what you want.
Exactly. And or you're giving them your story, you know what I mean? And it is the way you want if you're ghostwriting for someone,
Right.
and you're just
Have that
letting it go. But yeah, no, I never have a shortage of stories. I have just like endless fucking list of stories. And I came to the realization that like at some point I'm gonna probably die with stories unwritten, and that's gonna suck, you know? So
Right, but anything you've written right before you die is going to be hugely successful after you die.
yeah. Right.
Like Poe or Lovecraft, who both died super poor, but everybody recognizes him as legends now.
It's crazy. I'll take it. If I can get that, I'll take it, I guess.
At least you leave some legacy behind. But
Yeah.
all right, man, I don't want to take up all your time, so let's wrap this up. But how can people get a hold of you? How can they see your work?
I'm available. Pretty much most of my stuff is available on Amazon. If you just search Aron Beauregard, it's all pretty much there. But I would recommend checking out my site for signed copies and all. I got all different kinds of merchandise and apparel, even.
Did you get all that swag, like the bookmarks and the stickers and stuff, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes I'm doing certain exclusive things through my site, like exclusive books, to try to help people, make sure people are aware that it's there, and give people something that they can't get anywhere else. Because what we put up on Amazon, sometimes there's certain boundaries that you can't push, because you risk being banned. And it's like, if I print it myself and sell it direct to customer, I can do whatever I want. And if you want stuff like that, abhorror.com is my website.